Hello and welcome to Juice with the News, Episode 6.
Episode 6.
I,
This is crazy.
I always forget what episode we're on. We've done too many.
Episode 6 sounds right. I'm down with that.
We'll find out later.
Yeah, we'll find out later. Sure. Yeah, we have an amazing episode planned today. This one I'm really excited about. We have a special guest we'll introduce in a moment. But before that, Jack, what are we going to talk about?
Well, I just wanted to talk about how, like, the NHL, like as of recording, NHL is starting today, and and NBA has been going on for like a couple days now. And I just wanted to see what your thoughts on it. How, like, have you watched any games, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I watched the last the last 3 minutes or whatever of the Lakers Clippers game, and then I saw that overtime between the Rockets and the whoever they played. Forget.
The Mavs.
Thank you. I mean, I'm a big fan of basketball, not the biggest, compared to other, but it's a cool sport. I think that in terms of how they're handling during the pandemic, I think that basketball is doing it about the best they could. I think there's obviously a little more precautions they could be taking, but I think any more precautions that they could be taking would start to become just like way too aggressive and start to like impact the players in a negative way, I feel like. But overall, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I agree. I think the NBA has done a good job. I wouldn't say perfect, but they've done probably as good as, stuff permitting. But sucks for me because I'm a Bulls fan and the Bulls aren't even at the bubble, which is very disappointing. But it was entertaining to watch. And then the Blackhawks just suck. They made it because reasons, but they have to play the Oilers in the qualifying series, and they'll probably like get swept. So like whatever, who cares?
Yeah, I feel like that's the theme of this podcast too. Who cares?
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Okay, so let's introduce our guest. He is an amazing human being. His name is Jackson Bree. Jackson, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello. Apparently, I'm an amazing human being, and my name is Jackson Bree.
This is true. Jackson, we have a question for you.
Okay.
Do you think a hot dog is a sandwich?
So no, I do not think a hot dog is a sandwich, but I do think a hot dog is a taco.
All right, you don't think tacos are sandwiches then?
No, tacos are not sandwiches, but a hot dog is a taco.
Jackson, you and I are on the same page, mostly. Okay. So yeah, thank you for that. Jack, do you want to introduce this next segment?
Well, relating to that whole hot dog is a sandwich topic and hot dog is a taco topic, I think another thing that comes under controversy is the Oreo. I mean, we all love Oreos, so like, it's pretty relevant. But it begs the question, is an Oreo a cookie or is it a sandwich?
Yeah, and Jackson, you have some hot takes on this, right?
I do believe that an Oreo is a sandwich, because if an Oreo is a cookie, then that would make an ice cream sandwich a cookie. So therefore, an Oreo has to be a sandwich, or else an ice cream sandwich is a cookie, and an ice cream sandwich just can't be a cookie.
Well, I agree that an ice cream sandwich isn't a cookie, but the two things that they use it are cookies.
Yes.
So I guess you can't label something by like the two like pieces of like carbs or whatever, because like, for example, a hamburger, you don't call it a bun sandwich, you call it a hamburger because it's what's in the middle.
Mm-hmm. So like the two like Oreo things that that you like twist apart, like those are cookies, but then once you put it all together, then it's a sandwich.
I definitely agree with pretty much everything you're saying. I think I would not define it as a sandwich, but as a sandwich structure, because I think that I think in order for it to be considered a sandwich, it has to be bread. Like the outer ingredients have to be some sort of bread, and I don't think you can count a cookie as a bread. That's why I believe that hot dog is a taco structure, but not necessarily a taco, because I think a hot dog requires an outer bread shell, whereas a tortilla requires some sort of like corn or flour tortilla shell in order for it to be considered a taco.
A flour tortilla is basically just bread without rising. It's
Right,
basically
but it's
pasta, but like with some extra steps.
Exactly.
right, but like it's still not like technically bread, and I feel like if we're going by like a technical definition, I wouldn't count it as a sandwich, but I do believe, or as a taco necessarily, but I do believe that like they're definitely the same like genre, if you know what I mean.
Mm.
Right, like
I think personally, like I'm on the side that I think a taco is a sandwich and a hot dog is a sandwich, because I also think that a hot dog is a taco. But I think that tacos are sandwiches because of part of the same reason, except for my definition of a sandwich isn't just like two pieces of like bread or tortilla or like whatever. Also think it includes like a split roll, meaning it doesn't have to be like those two pieces of like carbs or whatever, it doesn't have to be separated. It still can be connected and be considered a sandwich.
That's
interesting.
an interesting take, but I disagree completely and fully. Um, I have come to the conclusion in my 18 years of living that anything with connected bread and something in the middle is a taco. So therefore, like, have you guys been to Shake Shack
Hmm.
Yes.
at all? So when you go to Shake Shack, the buns on the burger are connected, so that makes that a taco.
Yes.
So
Interesting. So when you go to Subway and they don't like cut it all the way through most of the time, you're eating a taco and not a sub sandwich.
yeah,
See, I agree with everything you say from like a technical standpoint or like from a definition standpoint. Like if we're going off like what are like the people who write dictionaries define as sandwiches and as tacos and stuff, I think that you're absolutely right. I think there is something to be said for like we define words based on how society perceives things to be, and if society as a whole believes that an Oreo is more of a cookie than a sandwich, then I feel like an Oreo would be a cookie if the majority of people believe it's a cookie. Because words only mean things when we define them as such. So I think that there's something to be said for that as well. But
here's an
yeah,
interesting question for you: is a fig Newton a cookie?
I don't know what fig Newtons look like. I can't answer that
I'd
question.
say yes. I'd say it's a
I say
cookie with
yes, too.
filling. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. We go from Oreos now to the great sport of baseball, and this kind of touches on what we were talking about earlier back in the beginning, which is baseball started up again. It did not have this bubble that the NHL and the NBA are having. It has caused a few outbreaks in recent times. A few games have gotten canceled because of outbreaks in the Miami Marlins and the St. Louis Cardinals. So we want to get your takes on it. What do you think that MLB could be improving on? Do you think the MLB should be open at all? Things like that.
All right, well, before we start this section, I would like to apologize to Jack for being a Cubs fan, and I would like to apologize to Eli for being a Dodgers fan. Um,
I mean, right now Cubs are top of the division, so just saying.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
I mean, I feel like I'm okay with my Dodgers fandom, but continue.
uh, See, the thing is with the MLB, like what the NBA is doing right now is like really good, and it's like really hard for players to contract the virus, and they're getting daily tests and everything, and um, that's like really good. But I think it would be impossible for the MLB to have a bubble like the NBA does, because like the NBA only requires like 15, maybe 20 players on a team, but the MLB needs like 35 or more on a team. So like having all the teams in that magnitude, like in one place, I think is just impossible, because there's like no place that can fit those kind of standards. So it'd be nice to have like a bubble for the MLB, but it's impossible. Um, so for that reason, like, I don't really know if the MLB should be happening unless they find a safe way to do it.
Yeah, I think that unless they're willing to, or unless they can physically find a way to institute some sort of bubble or some sort of safe like travel, because they're all going to the airport and like traveling, and of course they're going to contract viruses. That's just what happens when you like go to airports and such. Like it just happens. So I think unless they're able to like have a bubble at all, they should shut it down. And like I've been thinking, like, yes, I think it's harder, but I think it could be possible. Because if you find like enough hotels and you just keep them there, and then you find enough field space, which again, it's hard to do, but I think it could be doable if they like looked into it and they wanted to like keep their league safe. I think it is possible, but I don't think that they will do that because I think they're either going to think that they don't have to, or it's going to be too much work, or maybe maybe it isn't possible. But then at that point, I don't think the MLB should be going on because it's just not safe for the players and the rest of the teams.
Right.
Right. I think, like Jack said, I think it's definitely possible. I think that, LA and New York both have more than, 3 or 4 fields. Even if you only want to use MLB, they both have like 2, and New York has like one more in driving distance, right? You can like rent out hotels. You can have like the players drive themselves, so you don't have to hire additional staff, right? You like kick out teams who are eliminated from the playoffs. So like you dwindle it. Like it's definitely possible, but the question is like will players want to do that, right? Because like you said, for MLB there's so many more players and there's so much less field space, so it's going to be a longer season to try to fit 60 games for 30 players and 2 or 3 fields. So yeah, I think it's like Jack said, I think it's definitely possible. I just don't think it's something that the players want to do, and I don't think it's something that MLB wants to like pay for either.
Also, yeah, something to consider is that like behind the NFL, the MLB is like the greediest
Right.
league, like major league sports organization,
Right.
because like Rob Manfred and Roger Goodell are just like fat pigs stealing the money.
Pretty much. So what baseball is doing with their schedule is they have like, of course, they have the division teams like playing against each other, and then they have just one division playing against another division. I think it's in like the other like conference or whatever. But because they already have that schedule instituted where only 2 divisions are playing each other the whole season, I think they don't have to be all in one area. Just those 2 divisions have to be in one area, and then you can have multiple different areas, and that makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, they could do that.
Yeah,
At least
but then like
right.
when it comes time for the playoffs, like then you're gonna have to like quarantine 2 weeks between each match, right? So like
I think they would do quarantine 2 weeks before, and then just play the matches, and then if you get corona, then you have to quarantine again.
I can see that. Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing. Like if the NFL is even harder to do because they have even more players and like more staff. And I also think that those fields are harder to come by than baseball fields even. So that might be even more difficult. And that begs the question, should the NFL even start? Like, is it
Right.
worth it?
I hope so, but
I mean, like
I
the
don't know if
one
it should, but
I
I
mean,
hope so.
yeah, I want football, but
right.
Well,
But
you're a Bears fan, so it won't really matter for you anyway.
that's a good point. That's a good point.
like the one thing MLB has going for it is it's not like it's like for the most part a contactless sport, right? So like like you can stay like semi-distanced away, even though like we see that hasn't been working. Like that was their rationale for football. There's like no chance unless you try to bubble because full on contact is just
Maybe they should just do two-hand touch.
Yes, I would
Against
totally
black
want to
football.
see like Khalil Mack just like run and just like bear hug someone.
That'd be funny.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, so let's move on from baseball to a topic that I think we all still have opinions on. I think that baseball is a topic that gets us all excited, something that, we were all kind of raised on, at least for me. I was kind of like taught in my family and been a part of my family, right? So I think something else that is similar to that, but in a much different way for all 3 of us, has been religion. Religion is something that we were all raised on. I think it's something that we have become pretty critical of, whether in a good way or a bad way, whether depending on what. But I think that all of us have some really cool opinions on it. So I wanna hear everyone's opinions on religion as a whole, God. Do you think that what are your thoughts on organized religion? What are your thoughts on God, good, bad, anything?
I guess I'll start out here. And I think organized religion is the worst thing that happened to humanity ever. Um, I'm not saying like any particular religion or anything, and I'm like not like coming at anyone if they are religious. I'm like kind of religious, not like super religious, but like like I do Passover and Hanukkah and whatnot. Uh, but I just think it's terrible for people's like mental health and for people's like ability to make contact with others, because I think a lot of people think about their religion first rather than their own self. And um, especially because like especially in religions where there's like an afterlife, people spend their entire lives like devoting themselves to like get into this afterlife, and they're just like trusting some prophet 2000 years ago that said that that's what would happen. And like people don't actually live their lives as they should. They're just devoting everything for when they die. And so I think that's kind of toxic for everyone, really.
I think that I think like most things in world, I mean, of course there are exceptions. There are definitely positives and negatives to like everything. I think religion is a great example of that, because religion does give people an outlet to either like express themselves or to have some belief that either something greater than themselves, or that they, are, like they are part of something. It kind of gives them a sense like they belong to something. But it also creates, animosity towards people in other religions and other like sects within the religions. And it creates like unnecessarily violence, and it creates unnecessarily problems such as sexual abuse or stuff like that. And I think that part of it is bad, but there's also good parts. And it's kind of, I wish religion could just be used as a tool for people to just like uh, be a part of something, but instead it's used to make money and to create violence for part of it. So I think, it's a tough conversation to have, because I was also like, I was raised like, I'm not like super religious, but the temple, stuff like that. And like I do believe that it does have good qualities. Like it does also create a lot of like charitable organizations and stuff like that. So like it's hard to say like I would like people to not be in a religion, because I think religion is like good for people, but people need to recognize that it's not everything, and that this is just like another club you join per se. Not really, but something like it that you're just a part of, but it doesn't control who you are.
Yeah.
Right. I think, I mean, for those of you who don't know, I do have a little bit of a bias here. I am the son of a rabbi. So that being said, I do think that I'm very lucky to be a part of a sect of a religion that I don't think takes itself too seriously, which I think is really good. I think most of what I think a lot of what you said, Jackson, was right. I think that like religions that take itself very seriously or that are like very strict are horribly corrupt, right? You look at the Catholic Church, right? You can look at the Catholic Church. You can look at the cake. Right. I mean, like every religion that tries to take itself too seriously has like extremism, right? Like Judaism has Jewish extremists, there are Muslim extremists, like Buddhist extremists are like committing genocide right now, right? So like the KKK, right? Like every religion has this like extreme, and even like religions that don't even have an extreme that are trying to take itself very strictly are still causing like a lot of problems. Like the Catholic Church, it's not like an extreme religion, but it's still, abusing children, right? Orthodox Judaism is not an extreme religion, but there's still a ton of sexism going on there, right? I think that I'm lucky enough to be a part of a religion, kind of like what Jack said, that doesn't take itself too seriously. That is pretty much kind of like, this is the guide for our values. Like this is how we want like like this is how we want to live. We also want you to join our community. If you don't want to, that's fine. If you don't want to follow these values, that's fine. You're still welcome to our community. I think there's something to be said for that. I don't know if Judaism is the reason why I have the specific values I do have or not. It could be like just environmental factors. But I do feel lucky that Judaism has given me a community, and especially Reform Judaism, that has allowed me to explore things like, I don't necessarily know if there's a God or not, but I still feel lucky enough to call myself Jewish, right? So I think there's something to be said for that.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's all very, like, depending on how you were raised and if you were raised religious or not. And, like, I mean, my family never really did that much, but, like, I still kind of, like, I only went to Sunday school for, like, a year, and I didn't even have a bar mitzvah, but, like, I, I still, like, go to temples sometimes. Not, I go to temple on the high holidays. So, like, I'm not, like, super religious, but I can recognize, like, the faults in, like, organized religion. And I read an article in, I think it was the New York Times or the Washington Post or something, that, like, analyzed organized religion a few weeks ago, and it said, like, 97% of wars were started because of religion, and it's like none of that stuff really needed to happen, you know.
Yeah.
yeah,
I think another thing that I would like to talk about just briefly is the like is God or multiple gods, because I think a lot of a lot of people do believe and a lot of people don't believe, and I don't think that, at least because I'm like a Reformed Jew, that like it's like necessary to believe in a God. But like there are some religions where you kind of like do have to. But I personally like don't think that there is a God. I'd like to think that there's something bigger than me, but I just don't know. But I'm also not going to tell people that like, oh, there is no God, because at the end of the day, like none of us know. So I think to be absolutely certain and to listen to God's word or whatever is kind of ridiculous, because we don't know if that's like true, or if it was just written by some dude who wanted to make a lot of money. It's just like, it's kind of disappointing that like a belief system could be founded on complete lies.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we don't know.
I kind of believe the same somewhat. Like, I I can't say whether or not there is a higher power. I would like there to be, just because um, it seems like it would be nice to have someone, like, kind of looking over us, or something looking over us. But I don't believe it's very possible that the way that religions have set God out to be is correct.
yeah. I don't. I'm not a fan of the like you said, like the interpretation of God in Judaism, Muslim, Islam, Christianity. I do, like you all have said, I want there to be a higher power, whatever that form may be. I hope that, instead of it being just like this all powerful guy, like pulling strings like puppets, or things are just telling us like what is good and what isn't good. It's more of like kind of like a state of goodness, and not like an all-knowing entity telling us what is or is not good matter of factly. That being said, like when I look at this rationally, right, like my rational brain is telling me like there's no evidence to prove there is a God, right? In fact, like rationally thinking there probably isn't a God, but at the same time I also like feel like I want there to be a God, and if feeling like there is a God makes me happier, I don't feel like there's necessarily harm in believing in a God, so long as it doesn't end up like conflicting or blocking like your perception of reality, right? So like I think as long as you believe in whatever type of God you believe in, is fine up until your view of God starts to clash with reality, like for evolution, right? For example, right? Like,
Yeah.
That's when it starts to get complicated, I think. But yeah.
Or like when like people believe that like God is something that's like so black and white, like there's right and wrong, like the 10 Commandments, for example, like there have been like a lot of women who have been like punished because they like retaliated to like an attacker and killed them, and then people would use defense like, oh, thou shall not kill, and then they get put in jail for however long. And like that's something that like kind of was founded through religion. It's like you can't really look at the whole situation and understand what was going on.
Right. I think like one of my biggest problems with religion as a whole is that religions are not very critical of themselves or others, right? Like most religions stated in like their like holy books that homosexuality is a sin, right? And a lot of religions have said like, oh no, that's not true, right? But right, like a lot of religions have come forward and said like, no, if you're gay, that's fine, right?
Mhm.
Like we're okay with that. But you still have to address the fact that like our holy texts say this is a sin, and so we have to like we have to be very critical and come to realize like, okay, even though we don't believe homosexuality is a sin, we have to realize that the word of God, as we are told, says it is. So how does that impact how we perceive God, how we perceive our religion, and how we see this holy text? And I don't think that's something religions are doing nearly enough of.
Yeah. Well, I guess that about does it. Unless Jackson, you have something else to add.
No, I think those are all my thoughts on religion.
Do you want to give a shout out or anything?
Shout out to Eli for ditching me.
Yeah, I know it sucks. All right.
Rude. I asked you to room with me and you said no.
It was because I couldn't go to USC at all, so I know it's
Conversation for another episode.
yes, I'll be there. Another episode. Okay.
All right. Thank you,
This is
Jackson, for joining us.
episode 6. Have a good
Thank
day.
you, Daniel
Oh,
John.
thank you, Daniel Zhang. Yeah, shout out to DJ Dan X.
Daniel Jung is here.
He edits our videos.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Love Daniel.
Okay. Goodbye, everyone.